It's 1 o'clock, calling the meeting to order. Okay, it is a hybrid meeting. We do have a couple of people on the line and some members of the public. So if there is anyone with a declaration of interest, it was supposed to be provided written. However, if it does come up during the thing that you suddenly feel there is a necessary declaration of interest, please let us know and we'll deal with it at the time. So the first thing is the adoption of the agenda. Hopefully people have had a time to review the agenda. Is there, I can read it. Be it resolved that the agenda for September 11th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting be adopted as president. Could I get someone to move that? Okay, I saw Helen's hand first, seconded by Andrew. Okay, any additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing no questions, all in favor? Carried. Doing a land acknowledgement since this is the start. And I'm going to put a twist on it, which is going to scare Sally here in a second. So in recognition that September 30th is our National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, I want to respectfully acknowledge that the Board of the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority meet on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin people, and is charged by the Crown with the conservation of the Mississippi and Cart River watersheds, which also comprise traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat and several other First Nations and Métis peoples. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teaching about our earth and our relations. And as we move together along the path of reconciliation, may we learn and once again honor those teachings and bring them into the work that we do here. Thank you, and miigwech. I also wanted to put forward that many years ago, I'm going to say 15 to 20 now, I had the opportunity to sit in a seminar which had an elder who was part of the negotiating team with the federal government at that time. And he had a very interesting way of starting the meeting. And I'd like to do it with you today for a couple of 3 stanzas and then give you the sort of punchline to this. So what it is if you agree with what I'm saying, then your response to it is, I agree. So as the Board of the Mississippi, do we all agree that it's necessary for the Mississippi Conservation Authority to protect the water and lands in the conservation area? Okay, as the Board of the Conservation Area, is it necessary for us to understand what is happening in the watershed and look to the future as to how we can modify our plans and directions to protect the watershed for the future? And finally, as the board, do we agree that the Milliken Tail Museum is worth preserving as a heritage site and under the auspices of the Conservation Authority? So as you can see, though there may be individual differences that we have around this table, there are a number of things that we can agree on as a board. And it is those things that I'm hopeful that as we go forward, that we can always keep in the back of the mind that though we may disagree on some objects here and now, there's a lot of things we agree on and we can agree on it. The context of this story was the elder who said that he had the opportunity to do this opening. And it was with Prime Minister Trudeau, not the current one, the previous one. And he said, I noticed that he was fidgeting in his seat. So he said, I kept asking questions for over an hour, because they said, I felt that Prime Minister Trudeau at the time needed to learn patience. I noticed I didn't do roll call, but I know Sally has already done that. So to the main business. The first one is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Okay, I'm going to read the resolution. That the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on July 10th, 2023 be received and adopted as presented. Could I get someone to move that, please? Okay, moved by Jeff, seconded by Stephen. Okay, is there any questions rising out of the minutes? All right. Okay, comment from Sally?
So you may recall that because we have the requirement to issue our minutes within 30 days of a meeting, that I had made the request that we circulate them and they be approved remotely by voting. And it was raised to my attention by somebody from one of the municipalities that municipalities don't do that because it's actually considered a meeting. And therefore you would have to have some sort of procedures around holding this meeting. So that's why I'm having you vote on them today. And as a go forward, what this will mean is that in the event like this current month where we skip a month and we're not able to address the minutes within the 30-day period, that we will be publishing draft minutes within that 30-day period to ensure that we're compliant with the regulations. I haven't had any particular legal counsel on this as it relates to conservation authorities, but I have in discussions with other CAs determined that that's what they're doing, or they're not compliant and they've been doing what you know historically they used to do. So to ensure that we're compliant, I'm just going to be issuing draft minutes going forward.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Carried. Okay, our next is an employee presentation of the 50th anniversary of the Milliken Tail. And for those of you who didn't make it, it was quite a awesome event.
Better? Okay. I'm Sarah, and this is Rachel. On Sunday, August 20th, sorry if I stutter, I don't normally do this sort of thing. We hosted the Milliken Tails 50th anniversary celebration, where we celebrated the owning and operating of the Tate McKenzie and Naismith Museum. And it was awesome being a part of the group orchestrating this. So this is our site map. As parking was our largest liability issue, we constructed a parking plan, and on the day of was executed flawlessly. Thanks to great volunteers and staff that participated. We were able to almost eliminate foot traffic and vehicle traffic coming together, except for our accessibility shuttle, which was a wagon that we borrowed from the Elmont Fairgrounds, and it was pulled by our tractor. It went from the parking area to the Y, where our information center was. Rachel talked more about that. Down by the number 2, that was where our main stage was. Rachel also talked about that. Our playground area, number 7 there, we rented more children's activities from Run-A-Mucks. We had a 20-foot inflatable slide and tug of war and other games for the kids. In the roundabout at the Ed Center, we reached out to Jeff Schutz with Carlton Place Cruise Nights. And he was able to get us about 30 vintage cars for a car show. In the number 4 area, that's where the cloister is, where we do our wedding rentals. We had 7 local artists and vendors, ranging from stained glass to chainsaw carvings to baked goods, pottery. Number 5, we had the Civitan do a barbecue for us. And down by the museum, number 6 was where the what was his name? Jim. Sorry. Ken Allison. Ken Allison of the Mississippi Valley Field Naturalist ran guided hikes that left every hour. We heard great feedback. Apparently he's quite knowledgeable and the nature hikes were a hit. In the museum, we had a special exhibit put together by Jenny Carlton. She put together a beautiful collection of photos and information of the history of the Millikentel building itself. Upstairs in the loft, they put together a pottery craft, like so they could sculpt or like make pendants. And that was quite busy. And the Ramsey's Women's Institute also had a display there, which they have fantastic scrapbooks and quilts and stuff. And just out on the museum lawn, we put it together kind of like a classroom, school classroom. And there was coloring and guided or self-guided scavenger hunts and hula hoops and stuff like that, which was also quite busy. And that was
Yeah, so now we just have some pictures of what Sarah had just gone over. So these are our local vendors that we had set up in the Cloister area. This is the Field Naturalists, the Mississippi Valley Field Naturalists, their tours. This is where they departed from. And then these are some of the special exhibits that we had going on in the museum. These are the children's events and inflatables that we had. This is the slide and our kitty striker. And then these are some of the retro cars that were able to come out. So this is the main stage. We had a lot of activities going on the main stage for this part. So the day started up with the Cameron Highlanders who were bagpipe performers. This was a very special to have at our 50th celebration because they were also the same group who performed at the grand opening of the Millikentel Museum 50 years ago for our operation. So it was really great to have them come back for this. During the day, we had 2 local musicians. Sorry, I'll just move forward. I think it went back. There we go. So we had 2 local musicians. We had Vicky Brittle and Brock Zeman. They were both fantastic and they go all around the area and play events. We had a lot of great feedback for both of them as well. So we had welcome addresses that were given around 12 o'clock. So the speakers included Paul Kehoe, Paul Lehman, Ricky Manil, the Deputy Mayor of Mississippi Mills, Pascal Guindon, a heritage officer with the NCC. And then around 3 o'clock, we had a show by Little Ray's Reptiles, which was a very big hit for a lot of people, including kids. So that's the big group over here. We had a large group stationed right at the main stage, which was really great to see. And then at the end of the day, closing off the day, we had a photo contest that was available for public voting throughout the day. I have a few more pictures in the next slide. But the public was able to vote on the top 4 for their favorite. And then at the end of the day, we announced the winner. So I will get to that photo. And then we also had a 50-50 fundraiser going on that was facilitated through the foundation. So we pulled the winning draw for the 50-50, and I'll get to the statistics of that very soon. So this photo up here, it's a little dark, but Jason Fraser is the photographer who won the photo contest. And then right here were the top 4 photos. So they were on display right beside our MVCA information booth. And then right here in the bottom corner beside Mercedes was the photo contest voting. And then the 50-50 raffle was over here. And then we also had brochures with our site map that Stacy and Mercedes were handing out to everyone. Behind them was our face painting station, which was also a really big hit with everybody around. And I found it was just a lot of people coming together in one spot and a lot of children just having fun. So I thought the face painting was a really great part. And we had 3 face painters who worked pretty much the entire day. And then the Almont Civitan hosted a barbecue, which I heard they sold more burgers and dogs than they had in a while at our event, which is really exciting to hear. And they worked so hard and they were great to deal with, and it was nice and easy. on that end. The last thing I want to mention here is this was our accessibility shuttle. It went, as Sarah mentioned, from the parking lot to the MBCA booth, and it really definitely helped out. So just some final statistics. So as I mentioned, the 50/50 fundraiser was facilitated by the foundation. The sales mainly took place in person on the day of the event, and we raised a total of over $1,400, which is really awesome for the day sales. So the 50/50 split was just over $700. This is our first time running the 50/50 fundraiser with the foundation especially too, but it is something that we are definitely looking to maybe make an annual fundraiser, and we want to hold it online to possibly promote more sales and have it over a longer period of time. But that's all future discussions. So for the attendance, we had over 1,000 people come through our site that day. The men's shed was really awesome, and they were helping out with parking, and they were taking head counts as people were coming in. And then we also had separate tracking in the Mill Museum. And Stephanie, who is the site supervisor there, said that she had over 900 people come in the museum, which was extremely exciting for us. So finally, our budget for the event was about $6,000, and that includes $1,675 deferred support and revenue from Mississippi Mills. So overall, we were extremely happy with the turnout of the event. The weather worked out perfectly. Our staff would have been working very hard for that, so it was great with all the volunteers as well. So thank you to everyone who had a chance to come out and attend, and take some questions if anyone has any. Yes.
Yes, it was a great day. And I think that the 1,000 attendance was low.
Yeah. We were very happy, but
I
yeah.
I didn't get there till the afternoon, and there had to be 400 people in that area right then and there. Having said that, I get to my question, which will the displays become part of the permanent museum, or were they Jenny's displays within the museum? Will they be part of the permanent?
I think our exhibits do rotate. So I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be a full permanent display, but I'm assuming it's there for a little while. I can definitely confirm that with Stephanie, though, who curates all of the museum stuff, and I can let you know that.
No, it's okay. It's just, I thought of it because anything that can travel can be used to raise the profile of the Milliken
Very
town.
true, yeah.
And that was the point of the question. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Rachel and Sarah, thank you very much for coming in. I can express that it was a virtually amazing day. I was very surprised when I was there, and I just like to note that I picked that picture too. So, okay, before we move on to our next item, I just wanted to make one acknowledgement. Jeff is keeping me on track here. We have a new member, Alan Ubley from the city of Ottawa, has joined us for the first time. So welcome, Alan, and hopefully you find it's a very productive and easy group to work with. All right, our next item is my favorite, which is the GM update report.
Thank you. So this is probably one of the bigger GM update reports that I've issued, mainly because we did so much over the past several months. This has been an incredibly busy summer, and we did the 50th. So in the preparation for the Kashwakamak EA, there's been a lot of work and field work that's been happening with that. The crew that I have the pictures for here, they just wrapped up on Friday. It was a full 2 weeks in the field doing the bathymetry work that is needed for the Kashwakamak EA. So bathymetry work is basically your underwater elevation, so that helped to inform the modeling work that they do. Work has been progressing on the Carleton Place Dam, and we're hopeful that I think by the next meeting that all this constructed elements will be in place. There's the safety booms, the anchors that they're affixed to, and fencing and gate. So this was all, as you may remember, the result of a dam safety review that we undertook, if not last year, the year before, and that we received WECI funding for to complete this year. So this is great that that project's coming to fruition. There was some smaller repair work that we've been starting on Pine Lake and Mississaugagon Lake. Those are being done in-house and hopefully will be completed by the end of September. And then we have some, our two major floodplain mapping projects that are ongoing are the Carp River floodplain mapping and the Lower Clyde. So the Carp River floodplain mapping is a contract we have with the city of Ottawa. And what happens is it goes out for third-party review under a contract by the city. They hire the third-party reviewer. And so that process had been ongoing. And so once we get the comments back from the reviewers, then we'll be making modifications to our modeling and then going out to the public with the results. So just so you know, for those of you who are new to the board, you approve the floodplain mapping, you approve the engineer's report, and you approve the floodplain mapping. And there is an opportunity for the public to come and speak to you. Certainly at the public open house is where we present it and we address questions there and then. But if people have concerns, they have the right to come to the meeting of the board at which we seek your approval of the engineer's report and the floodplain mapping. So those are two projects that are coming down the pipe later this year. Update of the Carp and of the Lower Clyde. So I just wanted to put those on your radar as big items that will be coming for your approval, because it's basically the foundation upon which we execute our work under the regulations. So, or at least a huge part of it. As most of you, I hope, will know, MVCA, between myself and Matt Craig, are scheduled to attend all of your councils in the next 6 weeks to present on the category 2 and 3 agreements. So, and I think at the City of Ottawa, we're going to the Rural Affairs Committee first. I think it's sometime in October, we're going to Rural Affairs, and then staff will elevate it to the council. Another big thing is the IT network. The system we have in this building is basically over 10 years old now, and in the IT world, it's ancient. We're making do in large part, but there are some key components that need investment in. And rather than just investing like for like, we wanted to step back and take a hard look at the underlying design of the system, because as I'm sure many of you are aware, in your own municipalities, you maybe tackled the issue about, do we just go onto the cloud? What does that look like? What does that cost? What is the pros and cons for what components? So we had a firm come in, they did the attack tests. I forget the penetration tests, they call them, you know, internal, external. So we just received the report last week. And so this is something that we're going to be bringing forward. We hope to the Finance and Admin Committee next month and to the board next month. So with what the findings and recommendations are and how we might move forward with that, because it affects obviously our capital and our operating budgets going forward. So that's another big ticket item coming down the pipe. We're in the midst of getting legal counsel on all matters KMP related so that we can move forward with the sale. So that's progressing. The water and sewer connection, I want to flag this for you. We did inform the town that we had done the cost estimate per our the agreement we had with the town for the payment of the connection cost to bring it to the property line. The town has contested the methodology employed. So we had the firm that did the calculations redo it. There may still be some disagreement between the town and ourselves on how that's to be calculated. So we are seeking legal counsel on that because it's getting more complicated than we thought it was going to be. So this is another stay tuned as we work through on that one. Looking to the highlights here. I hope some of you had the chance to read the work that our students did this summer. They did a lot of great work, and quite frankly, the work can't proceed without them. So if you have a chance, if you could read about the work they did, because they're critical in terms of, in particular, our field monitoring program and the upgrade of our whole gauge system, that work would not have occurred this summer without the summer students. And then there's some good news things, the release of some northern map turtles at the Morris Island site was a big success. That just happened a couple of weeks ago. And then just flagging for you some stuff that's happening at the provincial level under changes to the EPA, the Water Resources Act, and the Clean Water Act. My impression is that they're not significant, but frankly, they affect municipalities more so than they affect us at the authority. So I haven't quite frankly delved into it, maybe to the same degree as your staff might want to. And then on the last page of the GM report, I just wanted to show the Osprey Tower that on the horizon. I got to tell you, that thing looks impressive. Like if you're in Canada, you're going to Costco or whatever draws you to Canada, drive by our site, the Carp River Conservation Area. It's on the north side of the highway opposite whatever they call the Sens Arena these days. It's totally impressive. So kudos to Janet and a whole raft of people who worked many years, and our foundation who funded this. It's an impressive draw to the site, and I look forward to the day that one or more Ospreys take up shop there. So that's it for my GM report. Happy to answer any questions people have.
Any questions? Andrew, followed by Janet.
Sally, thanks. Just on the Osprey Tower, is that purely a passive structure, or is there any provision for remote observation of what's going on in the nest?
I don't think we put in a camera there. No. Janet, you'll have to put on the.
I'll just note one of
Yes.
our two local osprey chicks was killed by a bald eagle a couple of weeks ago, to the great dismay of everybody who've been watching it grow up. So you think you're the apex predator, and then suddenly you're not.
Janet?
Yeah, I just have actually one correction and a question. A correction is that it was the Canadian Wildlife Federation, not Service, that you did the turtle release with. And I know because I work with the Canadian Wildlife Federation, and the Service is the federal government related group. So please correct that. And I know Dave Seaburn would appreciate it. And then I had a question on the Callum Anderson's. It says here that 3 new level gauges on the Carp River. And I wondered where they are located. Well, maybe.
Bureau, could you speak to where the new gauges are?
Once the questions are gone, you're probably not going to get anything.
Sorry, is it the same locations, just new ones? Is that?
Yes, it's at the Carp River, it's the same location, but we also installed new monitoring locations in our tributaries, Huntley Creek and Pool Creek, and Findle Creek. So we have now good coverage of the Carp River system.
Okay. Anything else, folks? All right. Thank you, Sally, for that report. It was very nicely done. Okay, so now we are going to item number 4, which is the budget control report, and I'm going to ask Stacy to take over.
Hello. This is the budget control report up to the end of July. Things are pretty much on track, almost exactly. There's some ups and downs, obviously, within different areas, but overall, we're at 58%, which is exactly where we should be for the year. As previously mentioned, we had budgeted a significant drop in the planning and permit revenues. The first quarter was extremely strong still, whether that was residual, but we're now seeing it is starting to level off and drop down to where we were expecting. So overall, it'll probably still be higher on the year, but not significantly. The staff costs are just slightly below budget targets, but that was due to some periods of vacant positions, but I think we're sort of temporarily fully staffed for the short term. The capital plan, as Sally mentioned, there's some issues around resolving the water and sewer connection here. It's looking like that may end up with the delays not happening till next year, just as a heads up on the capital plan with that. A couple of things I did want to note, if you've looked through the detailed budget, some of the areas in mileage and general expenses and staff development show fairly high percentages. This was the first year that we split mileage and staff development into two separate areas. And as there was no real basis, we just split it 50-50. Overall, it's within the range, but sometimes mileage was looking quite high. Insurance actually came in lower. In 2022, our premium jumped 57%. And they're finding the market kind of has softened a little bit. And this year we actually had a decline of 8% in our premium. So that was nice to see. On the planning and regs, legal fees, you'll see are currently at the end of July, we're just over 100%. And we know in August, we've already gotten another 6,500 in legal fees. That's catch up from 2021, 22, when courts weren't sitting and cases weren't happening. So 2021 in particular, we only had 5,000 in legal fees, which was quite low. So it started this year, we're expecting it's going to be higher. And it's catching up. The other that's quite a bit higher than we had been anticipating was the septic program. There were actually prior year costs that didn't get billed by RVCA before we closed our books. So what you're seeing is the increase is actually from the year before that didn't get picked up. That program, they're looking at taking it over fully, the ups and downs of billing it and things. So going into next year, it won't be on the books. But the comment on the billing leads into some of the later comment about timing of audit statements. So, were there any questions?
Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you for your report, Stacy. We're now going to move into the 2024 budget direction report, and Stacy will be leading that as well. Thank you.
Message addressed to meeting group chat. Wait. She just saw it.
Yeah. Oh, I must have done that by accident. Okay. All righty. Let me just.
Go ahead.
Okay. All righty. So for those of you who haven't been through a budget process at MVCA before, I thought I'd just start off by reviewing the process and the general approach that we take to budget setting. So it typically starts September, October. As I'll mention later on, it really starts with when we hear from the City of Ottawa what the City of Ottawa is doing. So this year we actually heard early, which is why we're having this conversation now instead of next month. And as soon as we come to the board and look for budget direction, then we obviously start working on the budget and we table at our Finance and Admin Committee, typically in November, and then bring it back for the board's approval in draft in December. And the reason why it's approved in draft is because we have regulations that require us to circulate it to all your municipalities, because a significant amount of our budget is the levy. And so we circulate the draft budget to your municipalities. And over the months of January, February, we hear any comments you might have, adjust the budget as necessary, take it back to the Finance and Admin Committee if necessary, and then bring it forward for approval in February. Now you'll see on this graphic, I've highlighted in different colors, February, because typically that final review of the budget happens concurrent to when the Finance and Admin Committee is reviewing our draft financial statements. You'll see in a report later on where we're recommending that that process be pushed out a few weeks because of timeline constraints. It's very hard for us to close the books and get everything processed by that date. As well, typically we have the AGM in February. And again, that's timing sequence is very difficult. So while historically this has been the process that we followed, in general terms, it would remain the same, except that in February, we're saying we wouldn't necessarily have the financial statements at that time, and we would defer the AGM till later in the year, but still have the budget approved in February. And in consulting with other municipalities, or pardon me, with other conservation authorities, that's often the case that that's the approach they take. So, but that's going to be for a subsequent report. But I just wanted to generally give you an idea of the process we follow. So as you do at the municipal level, you know, in terms of setting the tax rate increases, that the direction you give to your staff, what we receive is direction on the levy that's apportioned to your various municipalities. And it's typically divided into three parts: the operating levy, the capital levy, and then an assumed growth rate, because all of your taxes increase by a certain amount just naturally because of growth in your municipalities. And so it's that growth rate that we make an assumption around. Fees and other revenues we address separately. You know, the first key part that we get addressed here at this table at this time is what's the constraint on the levy, and then we work out the rest of it, and we'll come back to you at a later time with the other. So as I mentioned, typically we follow the annual tax budget directions set by the City of Ottawa. Something you need to be aware of, though, is that actual payments to the conservation authorities is made out of the rate budget, and the rate budget typically has a higher percentage increase for the capital in particular. And so I have every year gone back to the city to talk on the capital side, and typically the city is okay with a higher increase on the capital side. So this year it's coming to, I believe it's council this Wednesday, is it, or this week? Yeah. The tax budget direction being considered this week is a 2.5% increase to support operating, 3% increase to support capital, and assumed growth rate of 1.5. That's my latest understanding. I know there was a change at a certain point in time. I don't know if it changed since then, but this is, as far as I know, what's on the table. Yeah, okay. So I did go back to the city and spoke to the financial services unit that manages our levy. And I said, our capital plan for 10-year capital plan shows a 7.5 increase in the capital levy for 2024. Is this an issue? And they came back and said, no, it's not an issue. That they felt that the rate increase this year could accommodate a 7.5 increase on the capital side. I see that Glenn has his hand raised. Do you want me to? Glenn, are you able to unmute? Are you able to speak? Oh, wait a minute. That's a member. That's not our Glenn. That's, so do you want to address Glenn Bucci regarding his,
Which? I'm sorry, you've lost me.
The person asking to speak is Glenn Bucci, I believe. Okay, all right. So that's on the capital side. The city has indicated from the financial services unit that they could accommodate a 7.5% increase. On the operating side, what you would have observed in the report is I speak to the need to for us to phase on to the levy a certain amount of money that's currently being paid out of our operating reserves to implement changes that were approved by the board back in 2021. So in 2021, as I think everybody in the room knows, we were having an incredible housing boom despite COVID. And there was a lot of pressures on the organization. And so the board approved a host of activities and budget increases that couldn't be accommodated that year or the next year based upon the levy. So it was agreed that for the short term, and short term being 22 to 24, that some of those costs would be offset by the operating reserve, but that we would phase in those costs onto the levy over time. So the board direction said, we'll phase them in. We'll also carry out a fee study to see if there's other sources of revenues that can offset those costs. Not all costs have to be, paid through the levy, clearly. And that we'd also reassess over time in that, is this housing boom sustained or does it change? Do the demands on staff change? So where we're at today is that of the costs that were approved to be phased in over time, there's still over 278,000 that's being paid via the operating reserve. We have not been able to do any work per se on the fees because at the end of last year, the province imposed a freeze on our planning and permits fees. However, we are in the midst of carrying out a cost of service study, which is similar to a fee study in that it allows us to determine what are the actual costs that we as an organization incur to deliver different types of services, so that we can come back to you with recommendations regarding alterations to fees. And that we hope to have at the Finance and Admin Committee next month. And then be able to come back to the board with some ideas about how we could increase the fees going forward should the freeze be lifted at the end of this year as planned and not extended. And then the last piece in terms of reassessing over time, well, the truth of the matter, as Stacey mentioned, we have started to see a softening of the housing market in terms of new construction. We recently had a vacancy come up, and in discussions with the manager of planning and permits, our regulations, Matt and I, he feels that at this time, he's prepared to not fill that vacancy, which would alleviate the pressure on the operating levy. So where this lands us is that in the report, I hadn't had that conversation with either the chair or vice chair, and that's why the recommendations before you don't mention an additional pressure associated with transferring a certain amount onto the levy this year for the workforce plan. It mentions the moving 50% of that 139,000 on, but we think we can lessen that by $80,000 such that the additional pressure on the operating levy would be more in the line of 59,000. This would represent an additional 2% pressure on the operating levy. So in conclusion, this slide here differs from the one that you have in my report in that this one, am I able to move that? The bottom line here. Oh, wait, actually the second line here. an increase of 2% to the operating levy to reassign workforce plan costs. So it includes that 2.5 I mentioned off the top. It also includes 2% to the operating levy to accommodate that workforce plan. But this version, as compared to the one that's in your report, has been reduced by $80,000. So this one shows if you wanted to move forward with that FTE cut, this is what the impact would be on your levies. What you're seeing in that red column there is the total variance year over year from last year to this year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so basically, I'm gonna Okay, so basically, when I read this through with Sally, and I just want to put my spin on, we've been basically borrowing money from our operating reserve to pay this. And now is the time, in my thing is time to pay the piper. If we don't want to continue to take from our operating reserve, and we want to put this on the levy now and get it dealt with. That's essentially it. So any questions for Sally? Yes.
Sally, on the staff compensation side, this is just playing catch up with things that were agreed to a couple of years ago. So, and I know from our past meetings that you've recently done the salary band study. But how comfortable are you that staffing costs otherwise are going to be kept within the 2.5%? This is obviously a big issue at the moment for all of us with staffing issues to consider, because there appears to be a lot of pressure on costs for municipal staff. Is there a risk in here, or do you think the current compensation levels are going to hold with a sort of 2.5% COLA increase?
So as I mentioned earlier, there's more than just the levy as a source of revenue, because I think the short answer is no, 2.5 is not going to cut it universally for staff across the board on a sustained basis. Not for our organization being particularly this close to the city of Ottawa that offers, in some sectors more money than, quite frankly, we're able to. So I think that this is why it's important for us to look at all sources of revenue, including fees. We need to be doing cost recovery for services we're providing where it's their fee for service. One of the challenges we face is, well, it's not a challenge. It's more a reality. In the city of Ottawa, which is, constitutes, I'd say, in round numbers, I'm going to say 50% of our business. So, in the planning and reg side. All the 3 CAs, so ourselves, Rideau Valley Conservation and South Nation, have basically agreed we're going to charge the same amount. So no matter where you are in the city of Ottawa, you're being charged the same amount. And that sort of sets the mark for the rest of our jurisdictions. What we set in the city is what we, achieve everywhere. There are thresholds beyond which, sensitivities within the development sector, be it within the city or outside the city, the development industry says, well, your fees are getting too high. Or how is it the Conservation Authority wants to charge as much as my building permit, or whatever the case may be, whatever other fees they're paying. So we don't set fees in the absence of, considering all these other pressures on those who are seeking fees, right? You also get into equity issues in terms of, do you want to charge, a couple looking for a severance on their farm the same amount as you're charging a developer who's seeking 500 lots, right? So there's sort of fairness issues and affordability issues that we need to consider. All that to say that the 2.5 that you would be approving today is on the operating levy, of which compensation is one component. And my job in part is to figure out all these different pieces to make sure that I can attract and keep good talent in the organization. So it may be that some people, the COLA increase in the organization might be greater than 2.5. We've had it in years where it was 0.1, right? So the approach that the authority takes is we typically look at the August CPI. Last year it was 7.5. We came in with a recommended 3.5. The board approved 3. So it's not part of this direction today. I think we need to, Stacy and I with the management team need to go away and work up the draft budget and see what is an affordable COLA rate for compensation. I'm not going to commit to 2.5 right now. I want to see how the numbers work based upon what the board, gives me and what we're able to determine through the cost of service study. We're having these same conversations with the other 2 CAs in terms of those fees. Like, I think this year we're hopefully looking for a 3% increase on fees to help make up that difference. So it reduces the pressure on your levies, but there are consequences to upping those fees, right? That was a very long-winded answer, but I hope that was fulsome enough for folks.
Okay, any other questions on that? Janet?
Yeah, so first, as chair of the Finance and Admin Committee, it's very keen, I'm very keen to know, what the guidelines will be that we'll be looking at in the next, I don't know if it's coming up in this meeting or another one in November.
You mean in terms of the COLA?
No, yeah, well, but the draft budget, which will come to the FNA.
No,
be
that
November?
we don't see the draft budget will be November. There's no way we could
Okay,
get it done
okay.
for October.
All right, and then just a minor thing, because I like math. I looked at this table 1 in the agenda, and there's an error in the Beckwith Township numbers. And the operating levy and the capital levy should add up to the number that's in the total increase. And it does not. So I just want it noted in the minutes. And I don't know, it's such a minor number, but it's just important to note that there's an error. Thank you.
Okay, got that. I'm going to read the resolution here. So the resolution is that resolved that the Board of Directors direct staff to develop the 2024 budget and related documents in accordance with the following parameters. 1, a municipal levy increase of 2.5% plus assessment growth to the operating budget. 2, a municipal levy increase of 7.5% plus assessment growth on the capital budget. And 3, an assumed growth rate of 1.5% plus an increase of 2% to the operating levy to reassign workforce plan costs from the operating revenue. And it's moved by Jeff, seconded by Dana. After you coach me and everything.
It took me years to figure it out.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Okay, can I get a show of hands on the motion? Okay, the motion is passed.
Question, Paul or Sally, about the fees. Just a question. I believe the city of Ottawa, if you apply for severance, $1,500 or something around there goes to Rideau Valley or to Mississippi Valley. What is it in Lanark County? Is it comparable right now, or is there a difference? Do we have that answer?
Defer that to Matt.
And is it the same job you do? Is it the same paperwork you go through and the same?
The
thing?
city's always more of a headache. No, I'm kidding, but no, the exact same fee, the fee schedule applies across the watershed. So it's roughly $500 for severance in the city and in Lanark County, Frontenac County, Addington. So it's exactly the same.
Same price?
Same price. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is the appointment of a regulation officer, and the report is by Matt Craig. So you can just stay standing, Matt, and take it away.
There's no real report, just to inform the board, the Conservation Authorities Act requires the board to appoint staff to enforce Section 28, which is everything around development, and Section 29, which is our conservation areas. So we have a new staff member who already has his designation as provincial offenses officer. He's taken it with Ontario Parks. So he's ready to enforce the regulations. So we need the board's blessing to do that.
Okay, I'll read the resolution. Resolved that the Board of Directors appoint William Ernwine to enforce Ontario Regulation 153/06 and Ontario Regulation 120/90 of the Conservation Authorities Act. Could I have someone move that? Okay, moved by Heather, or Helen, and Tyler. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the next one is the rescinding the COVID vaccine and sick leave policy report. Sally, you have that? Is there anything to really do on that?
I just would say that I'm not sure the status of all your municipalities, but most jurisdictions that I'm aware of on the CA front have long since rescinded this, so we're a bit behind the 8 ball here. As it relates to the sick leave for contract staff, quite frankly, when the board approved this back in the day, I already had that authority, but it seemed to be something that most of your municipalities were doing. So just for clarity, it came here as a board direction.
Yeah, and any questions on that? No? Okay, so I'll read the resolution. Oh, we have a question? No.
Yeah,
I would remind
a
members of
question
the
if I
public
could.
that unless you, oh, it is Glenn Gower. Okay, Glenn Gower.
Hi, Sally, it's maybe not directly related to this report, but in general, what does the hybrid work situation look like for say, an office or administrative workers at MBCA right now?
Okay, so we have 2 types of arrangements. So if you're the front desk staff, we have 2 people at front desk. So they have compressed work weeks where it's a 4-day work week, 1 week and 5 the next. So they alternate Fridays off so that we always have coverage at the front desk. For the rest of the office staff, it's a hybrid work environment where 50% of the time they need to be in the office over any 2-week period. So it could be 2 days 1 week, 3 days the next, whatever that looks like. The main thing is everybody has to be in the office on Mondays, because Mondays is when we do a lot of FaceTime with each other to have meetings, staff meetings, training, barbecues, board meetings, that sort of thing. So aside from that, it varies amongst the groups.
Okay, and also the note in the report about the a much lower use of sick days this year compared to 2019 is also, I think, really interesting and also, yeah, to be commended, I guess. It's a big success, a major reduction. So be interesting to see if that trend continues and if we're seeing it in other workplaces too. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, just a reminder to members of the public that if you wish to make a presentation to the board, there is a process involved to get on the agenda. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to read the resolution. Resolved that the board rescind the COVID-19 vaccination policy dated October 20th, 2021, and that the board rescind the 2-week paid sick leave for contract employees testing positive for COVID-19. Could I have someone move that motion? Okay, moved by Bev. See, now you've thrown me off for the entire meeting now. Okay, seconded by Andrew. Okay, all in favor. Yeah, Allison, I need to get you in on one here, don't I? Yeah, because I missed you all the time you were on the line that time. Okay, our next item is the tightening of the annual general meeting financial statement and audit report. And this report by Sally, and it's on page 44.
So as I mentioned earlier in the budget direction report, we are looking to give ourselves more time, quite frankly, to close the books, receive any outstanding invoices from other organizations, provide time to our auditors to do a fulsome audit and report back to the Finance Admin Committee before bringing them to the board for approval. I did look at our regulations. We did reach out to other conservation authorities to see what their practice is. There's nothing in the regulations that require us to do this at our AGM. That's simply within our administrative bylaws, and we're fully within our purview to change it if we wish. So the amendment you have would allow us to continue to bring forward the budget and get it approved early in the year in February, but to give ourselves more time, and the auditors, quite frankly, because they more so than us are looking for this extension. It was an issue when we went out to procure a new auditor of everybody who followed up with us about bidding on the job. And KPMG has definitely asked for an extension to give them more time. The reason why we're bringing this to you right now is because they're already scheduling all their audits for next year. So that's the rationale.
So any questions on that? Janet?
Yes, well, I know why you're doing this, because the worry I have is when there's the election year. And then what you've got is you've got a whole new set of counselors and maybe one citizen appointee from Ottawa who are coming in brand new in February. So who's the chair? Who's the vice chair if they haven't been reelected? And so how do you run a meeting in February without having elected those people, the officer or the chair and the vice chair? And I don't know if you can bring in an unelected person who didn't win like, let's say Paul was not reelected and he had to at least chair February. How do you deal with that? So that is the only flaw that I see. And I mean, I understand completely why you're doing it, but it's that turnout, because we had this issue every time, every time I've seen these turnovers, these 4-year turnovers. So how are you dealing with that?
So certainly we can follow up with the other CAs to see how they would address it. But I think administratively, we would just look for an acting chair and vice chair until the AGM. So at that February meeting, assuming we have a new group of people around the table and we had lost the previous chair or vice chair, that we'd have to appoint somebody for the purpose of that meeting to chair.
Well, again, my only concern is that technically then from January through potentially the meeting in April, you don't really have a chair or vice chair, right? So the Conservation Authority Board has not really got someone. I guess you can say that they're acting, but they may not be there permanently. They're not in the job. They're not into the job. So I think I understand why you want to do this, but I'm wondering if you could look into that, because I have a concern about approving that. I mean, I guess you still have the leeway. This is just saying to April 30, you could still end up doing it in February. It's just giving you the leeway to do it, right?
That's correct. I mean, ideally, we would actually do it in March.
Right. Well, I know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, there's a take home for Sally there to look into and report back. All right, so I do have the resolution. It's resolved that the Board of Directors approve amendment of Section 13 of the administrative bylaw as follows. The authority shall hold the annual general meeting prior to April 30th of each calendar year and shall include the following items on the agenda in addition to the normal course of business. 1, appointment of auditors for the upcoming year. 2, approval of financial statements and report of the auditors for the prior year. 3, the election of officers. 4, committee appointments. And 5, appointment of delegates to Conservation Ontario. Do I have someone that would motion that? Allison, and seconded by, it's Mary Lou. I can't even read it from here, so. All right, any other comments while it's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay, our next item, item 9, is the update of administrative bylaw and policy consolidation report. Sally.
So as you may recall, at a recent meeting, I received direction from the board to disentangle what are effectively operational policies from board-approved governance types of policies. So the first step in that was to take a serious look at our admin bylaw and all those other sorts of things that have been approved by the board over time. So the list that you see itemized here are several appendices that were very much administrative in nature, but not belonging in a bylaw. So many of them would be termed governance related, but not required in an administrative bylaw. On that, I just wanted to point out that one of the members did identify to me that the reference documents I had used, which were federal template bylaws used for nonprofits and corporations, is actually not applicable in Ontario. Ontario has if you're incorporated in the province of Ontario, they have a different template. So I did look at that template and we're good. I just wanted to let you know that that issue had been raised, and I have since looked at the model bylaw that the province has as well. So what's being recommended for removal are things that do not belong in an administrative bylaw of a board of an organization such as ours. And then it's a question of whether or not it's going into a corporate policy manual or some other document. So for the time being, because we haven't done the actual review of these policies to tease out those components that are truly operational, like use form X kind of stuff, we're putting them carte blanche into the corporate policy model manual. So if it was approved by the board, we're putting it in the corporate policy manual, and then we'll work our way through each of these to do that further disentanglement. So step 1 was to get them out of the bylaw. Step 2 will be to do the review of each of these policies. So that's what you have in front of you here today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, Andrew.
Sally, it's not a big one at all, but just wondering why we would have board mileage in the bylaw and staff mileage in the corporate policy manual. Do we currently have different mileage rates?
Yes, and the model bylaws do prescribe that any compensation of board members be in the bylaw.
Yeah, Andrew, I can comment to that. So that was brought up about a year and a half ago. And the reason being was that we felt it was more appropriate that the board members go with the provincial of Ontario mileage rate to be consistent with the province where staff have a different mileage rate. So there are two. Janet.
So again, going back to the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, there's more to it than the model bylaw. And I know that MVCA is incorporated provincially. But I'm thinking you may need to review the whole act because it is brand new. And I don't know if that affects other things, the way that MVCA is operating. And so I'm just saying that I'm going to say a quick read, but it's not. But there may be many things that just aren't applicable, like members. And I mean, I know there's a whole lot of, and financial statements, we're already doing all that, but you may want to take a look to see if it affects anything else. That's all. Okay.
So thankfully, we have Conservation Ontario who's done that. So a lot of the changes that, you know, that were in the last version where I said administrative nature, that's where we picked up on those.
Okay, seeing that it's covered off, the motion is resolved that the Board of Directors approve amendment of the administration bylaw and consolidation of various policy matters in a new corporate policy manual as set out in this report. Could I have someone move that, please? Okay, moved by Taylor and seconded by Allison. All in favor? Error. Okay, our next item on the agenda is group insurance rates. Yeah, that's should be an interesting one.
Hello. MVCA participates with the other Ontario conservation areas. As a member of Conservation Ontario, we pool all of our benefits, and there's a committee that reviews that and makes recommendations. It changed in 2022, and it went out to market with pretty much no change, a 0.1% change. Anytime you go out to market, it comes back either reduced or very small change. It's then over the next few years going to change as they actually get to know what's going on in your plan. And generally it ticks back up again. When they marketed the long-term disability and the life insurance premiums were locked in for longer periods. The health and dental was not. It's being reviewed this year and is going up about 7.7%. Total increase for the year is about 12,000. So just to let you know, heading into 2024's budget, that's one of the pressures we've got, is that health and dental premiums are going up quite a little bit. Any questions?
Yeah, I think we could all have comment upon the insurance company and how they're whacking municipalities right now, because it's starting to look like a major line item in everybody's budgets, and it's getting a wee bit ridiculous. I still feel the province of Ontario should, they insure themselves. So we're kind of creatures of the province, so they should probably insure us too, but that's not going anywhere. Okay, any other comments? Okay, so that was for an information item. And that gets us to the last items on the agenda. So there was no consent. So I'll ask, does anybody else have any other comments or stuff to bring forward for the good of the Conservation Authority? Seeing none, I'll read the final. Be resolved that the Board of Directors meeting be adjourned at whatever time it is. Can I have a mover? Okay, we can move Helen and seconded. Oh, Clark gets his name on the thing first time. And all in favor. And we're there. Good job, folks.